Hello and welcome back. I am Dawn Westmoreland, your talk host, coming from WPVM FM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville, coming from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. As your talk host, I am excited to talk about empowering things that are helping people have better lives, better work commitments and such, and also more creativity. Recently, a friend of mine, Blaine Greenfield, introduced me to Ronald Rand. And when I met him, I thought, oh my goodness, this man is one of the kindest souls I've ever met, one of the most creative people I've ever met. It's going to blow your mind, folks, everything that he's done. He's got so much experience. Ronald, welcome to the show. And I want to start out with a little intro. It's best if you tell the group everything you do. I can't even with running shoes. I don't know that I could keep up with everything you're doing. It's amazing.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be with you, Dawn. I so appreciate you having me on your show, and congratulations on your beautiful book, The Empowered Whistleblower, and all the work you do. It's extraordinary. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity to talk together. Well, it's just been an amazing journey. I've been very, very blessed. I'm what's I've been called an international cultural ambassador because I have been sent out by the State Department as a Fulbright specialist, scholar, and a visiting guest professor. I've been to four countries. I've received four Fulbright Awards already. It's been a great blessing. Each country I've been to, I've been there for 6 weeks, to places like Bosnia and Herzegovina and Malaysia and Uruguay. And I just came back from Greece this past year. So it's just been an amazing journey. But I've also traveled to 26 countries all around the world in 20 states, and I've represented the United States in the Theater Olympics in India, but I've crisscrossed India 5 times. With my show, I tour around the world in a play called Let It Be Art. I'm a solo performer artist, and I bring to life Harold Clurman, who was the elder statesman of the American theater, one of the most passionate people you could ever meet in your entire life. I was very fortunate when I was 17 to study with him in New York City. At the same time, I was studying with whom I consider the greatest acting teacher who ever lived, Stella Adler. And at the same time, I also was studying with a great German director named Jerzy Grotowski. And they all had an extraordinary impact on my life and changed my life completely. And so I've been touring for 25 years in my solo show. And at the same time, I also have gone to over 40 different universities and colleges teaching my Art of Transformation workshop, which is really an extraordinary opportunity to talk about courage and passion and the things that you love to do in your life. I'm also the founder and publisher of the Soul of the American Actor newspaper, the only paper in the country about the art of the theater and the arts. I've been doing that for 26 years. And I'm also the author of three books. One which is Solo Transformation on Stage, all about how to create your own show. And also the one right before that was called Create, with 130 of the most extraordinary people on the planet, full of creativity, with over 100 artworks as well in it. I'm also, if you don't mind me telling you, I'm also the librettist of the first opera ever written about Henrik Ibsen, the incredibly extraordinary gifted Norwegian playwright who wrote A Doll's House. And I'm also the screenwriter of the first film about the group theater called Group Paradise. So those are just a few of those things that I've been doing.
Just a few things. As I said, my goodness, if I started reading off everything, Ronald, that you have done, we're going to need to have a 2 hour show. And I have to ask this, in the school systems today, a lot of times, one of the first things when there's budget cuts is the arts gets cut.
Yeah.
Now you're a creative. You've been in many, many plays. Gosh, you've been at so many platforms and such. Why is art and creativity so important to our world, Ronald?
Well, what I've discovered since I got here to Asheville is that unfortunately the University of North Carolina, Asheville also decided to cut their theater arts program and a lot of other humanity programs. And it was a surprise and a shock to me, as it was to the community. And I know that eventually it will change and they will restore it. I'm sure that will happen. And we go in cycles. One of the reasons I think is that even though most of the people who are making the cuts probably were in shows when they were in school, don't realize the extraordinary impact that art and creativity can have on the soul of every human being that it touches and the vibrations that it spreads out across the world and the universe in touching us and making us more human. I mean, after all, Harold Clurman, whom I bring to life, was a humanitarian, and he always would say, and it's in my show, it's up to us how we shape our daily lives. And if we're going to take a moment to cut things, we could also take the same moment to say, okay, if we have an issue where we don't have enough money, we can do things to raise the money to save the arts, save these programs, because the young people need it more than ever today.
That's a good that's a good finishing point right there. Why do you think they need it more than ever? What's the difference between when we were younger and today's people?
Well, I always ask people in my workshop, one of the questions I always ask is, what is a human being? What
Mhm.
are the different things that turn you into who you are, how you think, how you become the person you are? And a lot of it does require enormous courage every single day to wake up and say, how am I going to embrace this world? And what is it that I need to do? Today, young people, of course, are being influenced by so many things coming at them so quickly that they don't have a chance to step back sometimes and think the thoughts that are percolating in their heads, to think their own thoughts instead of people really ramming things down them. I think it's important that they really decide to perhaps breathe, which is very important. Take the moment, look inside themselves, and say, what is my greatest passion? What really turns me on? And then start to say, what is it that I want to really do in this life? How can I make a contribution? How can I touch other people's lives? It's so important that we really inspire others, that we also share the love that we feel inside ourselves and open ourselves up and give it away, because that's the only way we can spread this light. So that's one of the reasons I continue to travel around the world, is to awaken and sort of empower young people. And I have a lot of workshops with adults who also are looking ways to be freer and express themselves more creatively. So it's what I truly believe in.
Now, we've talked before this interview, and you teach people how to fly. And I said, wait a minute, how does he teach people how to fly? I was in the Air Force.
Well, you
Teach
were
people
doing
how
it.
to fly.
Well, I actually take everyone in the workshop through an exercise where I invite them, because earlier in the workshop, I say, okay, everyone, we're going to pick an animal and become the animal and see how it releases you and see how close you can become to it. But when we get to this exercise of flying, I say, now we're going to pick a bird and you're going to close your eyes. And it's sort of a meditation relaxation moment where I invite them, because by then we've all become a family. And we are all one. We are a family on this earth, and we have to respect and trust and love one another. And so by that time, we have created this trust in the workshop. And I ask them to close their eyes and imagine themselves becoming this bird. Their body is changing, their mind is changing into a bird's thoughts. And in their mind and through their eyes, I say, now we're going to imagine you're on top of a mountain, and we're going to let our whole body become wings. And we're going to, in a sense, and I take them through a whole process of where I actually take them as birds flying. And everyone in the workshop experiences when they come back and land again, they really believe they did fly. It's amazing. That's the power of the imagination.
Oh my gosh, as a child, I lived in my head and I had quite the imagination. In fact, Ronald, I got in trouble because I was always, in my imagination, and then I got all logical and went in the Air Force 20 years. But I have to say, the most alive I've ever felt is when I'm
Yeah.
creative. And why is it that we feel so alive when we're far more creative?
Well, we're giving ourselves we feel maybe it's out a little outside of our comfort zone, outside of the box that we might sometimes put ourselves into because we have to do the work we do. I've been very blessed to do work that I love to do every day. And if not, if people are not able to be doing work they love every day, and they of course need to make money and do the things they do, what they can still do in the time where they're not doing that is that they can release themselves. They can read books. They can go to plays. They can go to museums. They can also sit down with themselves and say, what if I am a bird? What does that feel like? They can sit next to a tree or actually go out and hug a tree, which I encourage my students to do. Go for walks, really feel one with nature, and also allow yourself to grow and expand every day through your imagination and imagine what your dream is. Now, I always tell my students, if a genie appeared right now with a magic lamp and you were going to rub it and you had three wishes, what are they? And a lot of people look at me, even, of course, a lot of adults like, well, I mean, I could imagine this or dream that, but do you really know? And what if it actually came true? And what if you worked every single day to make that dream come true? And it actually does. When I envisioned myself traveling around the world, sharing my solo play, I just thought, well, it'd be an incredible blessing to get to one country. And now I've been to 26. So
Oh my
it's
God.
mind-blowing
Mhm.
what you can do with your imagination.
It sure is. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So for the logical people who want to be more creative, Ronald, is there some steps that they can take to become more creative? I know so many people, they're brilliant, smart, they're always in their head, they're good with numbers, strategies, advice. How do they get out of that, that left side into the right?
Well, that's what happens. We do go into our heads a lot. And we also listen to our ego, whatever word you want to use for it. We are talking to ourselves. So somebody's doing the talking and somebody's doing the listening. So who is that? That has to be us. So now you can decide, like I always say, keep your mind on the thoughts you want to think and off the things you don't want to think about. If you want to think about releasing your creativity and then your mind says, well, I can't, I've got to go to work in a half an hour. No, you can take those 5 minutes and say, can I read a poem? Can I sit down and start a page in a book? Not necessarily online, but it's fine, whatever way. Or can I listen to a beautiful song or a beautiful a composer's composition that will just inspire me and let me get out of my head, get out of my body, and go someplace. It's the same thing. I always encourage people to at least get outside and walk for, 10 or 15 minutes. People say, I don't have the time. You can make 15 minutes. You really can. It's amazing if we set aside, even if it's 15 minutes, to read something. In my book, Solo Transformation on Stage, it is about creating your own show and telling your own life story, but it's also about telling stories. And so many people are gifted. I watch them every day tell what happened to them and tell what's going on. They have that incredible enthusiasm and excitement inside themselves. So if you have that, and sometimes it comes through your dreams, write it down, even while you're sleeping. And in the morning, see what you've come up with. But keep allowing yourself the chance to expand. That's what it's about.
And we dealt with Hurricane Helene recently, and you dealt
Mhm,
with building your resiliency muscles, Ronald. Can we talk
mhm.
a little bit about what happened to you? You have such a great
Well,
attitude.
yeah, I lost about 90% of my possessions in the Shenandoah River came down and it was almost 30 feet high, traveling at 125 miles an hour and just totally pulverized the U-Haul where I had my things. So the same thing happened to so many other people. They lost their homes, they lost loved ones. It was just heartbreaking, and it still is for many of us here in Asheville. And I just moved here in June, so I'm still finding my footing. But I came to a place of acceptance, recognition that obviously this is what was meant to happen because it happened, and I have to come to peace. The law of acceptance is one of the most important things, besides forgiveness, and so many others. But building that, it came to me that I could go forward, maybe even stronger after it, and out of it, a very good, beautiful friend, Blaine Greenfield of Blaine's World, created this GoFundMe page, which I
Good.
just have been astounded by so many dear friends, Larry Luckenbill and Rita Frederickson, Tina Chen, and so many of my dear friends and communities around the country have supported me that way. And so it's allowing me to continue publishing my newspaper, The Soul of the American Actor, which I've been doing for 26 years. And because it represents an opportunity to talk about the joy of not only being actors, but being musicians, composers, dancers, singers, painters. So I incorporate all of those into my newspaper because it's about the joy of creativity. And also, the things that they talk about are inspiring. They talk about passion. They talk about courage. They talk about what it takes to get through these moments of being resilient. And then you discover something that you didn't even know about yourself. And you have to recognize that there's so much more inside of you. It's incredible.
You do have a lot of personal power. Yes. And thank you for sharing that because I know there was so much loss in Asheville, North Carolina, and you really could have been really upset, bitter, but you're making the best of it. And one thing I know also, because we've chatted before, is that you help actors, new actors, actresses, to have the courage to move forward. Can we talk about that? Because that must be really terrifying and so competitive trying to be an actor today.
Well, it's the same for everyone in every field that they're in. I mean, of course, I was in New York City where I was since the late 70s, and I was there, of course, for 9/11. And that was another moment of not only there, but across the country and around the world for people to question, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I mean, some actors even thought, I mean, it makes no sense for me to continue doing what I'm doing in the face of this. But it does make sense because what we can contribute, who we are in our deepest soul, is what makes us so unique. And it's unlike anyone else on the planet, but together as a whole, we are one. And that is the power we share. So each individual actor, even in the business, has no competition. You are incredibly unique the way you are because the gifts, the talents, and the way in which you're going to stir people's souls are unlike anyone else. And that's the beautiful thing that I've discovered being an actor my entire life. I started acting when I was probably between 5 and 6, and I knew by the time I was 6 or 7, I was going to be doing it the rest of my life. When I discovered my destiny, touring around the show as Harold Clurman and teaching my workshops, that was a whole different path. But I've done hundreds and hundreds of TV shows and movies, and it's been one of the greatest gifts. But starting out as an actor, being blessed with having Stella Adler as a teacher, she imbued upon us that we are noble creatures, human beings. And the first and foremost, you must be the greatest human being you can be.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
decide what it is you have to say to the world as an actor, or what you have to say to the world in whatever job you're going to do. It's all about being in service to others. And that's what I truly believe.
When did you feel that way that you have to be in service to others? Some people are born with it, some people it comes on later on. Ronald, when did it come to you that you wanted to really help other people?
I know that it's a calling, and I think it started. I mean, it's built on the muscle of compassion, of empathy, and it's grow what we call integrity, but it's also based on the four agreements that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about in his book. I mean, some of them are don't take anything personally, or be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions. And once you read these ideas, they start to stir thoughts. Now, when I was in NYU studying, I also came to a realization that I needed to know more about people. And so I took 6 to 7, 8 years to read and I know it sounds absolutely absurd and bizarre, but I read every important book that's ever been written. And I took my time reading the greatest novels from every country, reading Gray's Anatomy, studying medicine, reading all the great books of philosophy, of psychology, studying all the great philosophers, reading all the most important books of every religion, trying to understand who I was and what this world is made of. And so that had an incredible impact upon me. And as I spent time, traveling around the world, being in mosques and temples and churches, and realizing that what we're doing is, a calling, each one of us. I think it started certainly when I was with Stella Adler, but probably before, because I did spend time taking care of World War veterans in a hospital who had come back from different wars. And it built a muscle inside of me that we have to care for others. And that's, I think, when it started.
Do you think more so now than ever?
Well, it's a very trying moment for a lot of us, and we all have incredible emotions, and things have occurred not only in America but around the world. We're constantly beset by so much coming at us, the news, the media, and we really have to look at ourselves and say, how do I take care of myself so that I can share my gifts with others? And one of the most important things is to take care of yourself, is to learn how to start the day. I just had the great opportunity to talk with Marianne Williamson. And of course, she and I talked about how each day you have to start with affirmations or reading, or doing a meditation, or doing something that really stirs your mind to think in a way of expansion, of peace and harmony. So then you can take on the day. And it's a good way to step back and then step forward. And that's what I'm a big believer in. And so each moment, if any pressures are coming at you, step back, take a breath, and then realize the courage, the strength that you have inside to go forward.
Oh, that was just beautiful, Ronald. And I'm a big fan of Marianne. I've heard her speak a couple times,
Mm,
and it really touches the heart. She's very heart centered and such.
yeah.
Now, you've worked with some really amazing, popular, well known actors. You've been around them. What is
Mm.
that like? Does it ever go to your head, or is it just another day?
Well, it's never another day, but I mean, sitting down, working on a film with somebody like Anthony Hopkins and having lunch with him is a real thrill in a way, but also you have a chance to talk about and share ideas, or getting to know someone like Alec Baldwin, who's become a good friend, and working with people like Tom Cruise or Sean Connery or Dustin Hoffman, and what you begin to while you're working, of course, we're both working. We're doing a job just like everybody's doing a job. It just so happens it's on a film set. But the beautiful thing is that in that moment, you're sharing a special moment. And I think no matter who we are, we have to open our hearts and embrace everyone and realize everyone we meet is special. And that's what I believe in. So, no, it doesn't go to my head, but I do enjoy the opportunity of working with really good people. Like I had the opportunity of doing a film with Angelica Houston, or I was surprised to end
Wow.
up working with Yoko Ono and doing things like this. It just reminds you that we're all in this together. We're doing the things we love, and we're doing them with passion. But we have to always come back to recognize, and this is what I talk about in my workshop, is that each day be patient with yourself. Each day forgive yourself. Things may not work out the way you want. It's okay. When things do work out the way they are, that's what's meant to happen. And accept it and keep forgiving others. I mean, we all make mistakes. God knows none of us are perfect.
I'm glad you're talking about forgiveness because in forgiveness, I know for myself, when I started forgiving people, I have to share real quickly. I had an autoimmune disorder for 19 years,
Hmm.
hyperthyroidism, pretty rare. Guess what?
Wow.
After I started forgiving everybody, it went away. It's been in remission a year and a half. So
Ah.
I know it works. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yes, it truly does. It's a challenge, but each person is also each experience you have is a great lesson about how to grow, how to expand. And because I do my play, Let It Be Art, in so many countries, one of the great things about it is that in order to bring Harold Clurman alive, I go through almost a 3 hour transformation in what I call the creation room. It's not a dressing room. It's actually a place where creation begins. And I've laid out all of his clothing. And I know that he's going to come, and I never know when. And he's almost 80 years old, and I'm putting on my makeup and opening myself up as a vessel. And I've only learned this because I've been an actor for my entire life. And I never know when, but at some point, he does literally come and enter me. And he gets dressed, and he doesn't leave the dressing room. He leaves the creation room, but he's actually on his way from having seen a show, and he doesn't go on a stage. He goes into his apartment to live. And I never know what he's going to say. I know that there are words in the play, and it came through me the same way. I had no idea where these words come from, but I opened myself and asked him, "What do you want to say to others now?" And and he just thrives off of what we call the audience, but he's talking to his three students. And when he has said what he's come to say, he's off and he goes to the theater, and then I return. And it's happened that way hundreds of times, and it's a great blessing. But that's the art of transformation. It's not a simple thing and an easy thing to, say, oh, I can do that, like that. It's a process. But everything we do in life is a process. I'm
Yeah.
a painter. I'm a acrylic artist, and that's the same kind of process, using a brush and using something. Now, I don't always paint on canvas. I'll paint if I'm traveling around the world. I'll paint on shells or on bark or on stones or on things I find because it's so incredibly challenging. On tree pods that are hanging from a tree. But it's always a process. But I leave myself open and say, okay, which color? Oh, you? Oh, you want to? Okay, and I pick that color.
I love
And
that.
where do you want to go now, brush? Okay, you want to go there. I never know what's
Trust.
going to happen. That's it.
And you must have read my mind, Ronald, because I was going to ask you, do you ever channel information? But you just said things come out. I mean, I guess they filter in and you just don't know, and then it comes out. Is it that way with everyone?
Yes, everyone, I believe, has that ability if they're willing to allow themselves to be open to hearing more than they normally hear. A lot of times we're rushing, we're doing so many things. Sometimes we do think, but of course, during our dreaming state, everyone dreams. And naturally, if you have dreams, make sure you leave a dream journal or a notebook right next to yourself with a pen. Some people put lights there or whatever in the dark. And I always do. And I tell you, over a 3 month period, these words flowed into me. I had know what they were. And when I started writing them down, they only lasted for 3 months. And I never knew when they would come. I
Hmm.
realized that this was Henrik Ibsen talking to his wife. Another week later, he was talking to Nora, the lead person in A Doll's House, talking to Hedda Gabler, talking to a young waitress who was an actress in the cafe he would go to. I'm going, where is this coming from? But it didn't come in prose, it came in verse. And months later, I was told by a wonderful director in India, uh, Jill Navarre, who said, this is not a play, this is not a poem, this is an opera, and you're going to have to learn how to write a libretto. And I know a composer who's living here in Oroville in southern India, and you and he are going to get together and write an opera. It took me a year to learn how to write a libretto and studied the greatest librettists in the world. And lo and behold, we worked for over 10 years, and now it's under consideration by a major opera house in America. So you just never know.
Wow. Ronald, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can certainly find my books, Solo Transformation on Stage and Creating Acting Teachers of America at Amazon. You can also visit my websites at soulamericanactor.com or go to letitbeart.com. I'm going to be doing my show, Let It Be Art, at the Black Mountain Center of the Performing Arts on April 25th, here right outside of Asheville and Black Mountain. And then I'm going to be teaching my workshop 2 days later, The Art of Transformation, on April 27th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I certainly encourage you and invite you to come.
Yeah, folks, we're out of time. I'm your host, Dawn Westmoreland. We've been talking to Ronald Rand. Thank you. What a great creative you are. Thank you for empowering others and being a great humanitarian. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.